Everyone, I'm Jeremy Adams, a business development executive for the Fulcrum Group and self-labeled Chief Health Officer. Thank you for attending today's virtual Lunch and Learn, which is a city's only educational webinar for city management and city IT teams. Our goal is to identify some concerns, problems, issues that cities and local municipalities have to remedy while keeping their users and data secure in today's cybersecurity environment. Our presenters today is Fulcrum's finest, our leaders, David Johnson and Steve Meek. David Johnson is our VP of Sales and self-proclaimed queso connoisseur, even though he rarely wins our queso competition, but
That's
I
true.
guess we'll find that out next week.
That's right.
Steve would
I'm
say
gonna give
he's
it a shot.
you gonna give it a shot? Awesome.
Yeah.
Steve would say he's an old school security guy and doesn't mind explaining things. Steve is a longtime cybersecurity expert and has maintained a CISSP certification for a number of years now. We've assembled a panel of your peers to have a discussion during the second half of this event to talk out ways to handle these concerns and what it means to these specific managerial roles. Included in our panel is our city's fractional CIO, Ryan Young. Last, before we get started, Dave or Steve, if one of y'all will find that mute all. I wanted to say that I had a hand in getting everyone here, and as promised, this is meant to be educational only for you to potentially verify everything you're currently doing, but also maybe identify potential gaps where security is concerned, or to bring up topics that have not previously been discussed in detail with your management teams. If you'd like a better understanding or more specific explanation as it pertains to your city's environment, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to jump on a call or on Teams to help out, even if that means nothing for us moving forward. So without further ado, David, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm David Johnson, Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at the Fulcrum Group. And today, my presentation is around local government cybersecurity best practices. So we're going to jump right in. Here's a quick agenda for our presentation. First off, we'll give you just a real quick background of the Fulcrum Group and our cybersecurity expertise. Then we're going to discuss what's at risk for local government agencies. And then we're going to break down the top 5 cybersecurity concerns for city managers and IT managers. And then we'll discuss some best practices with a special emphasis on public safety. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you do have questions along the way, make sure to throw those in the chat, so we'll make sure we'll get those addressed at some point during the presentation today. Here at the Fulcrum Group, we like to think of ourselves as your technology success partner. Over the years, we've worked with a lot of government agencies and other public sector organizations with a primary focus on cybersecurity. In other words, this ain't our first rodeo. In the chat, let us know the name of your organization and what your role is, so we kind of know who we got out there. And I'm not going to sit here today and regale you with the horror stories of cyber attacks against government agencies. Instead, I'm going to focus on the risk, the top threats, and what you can do about it. When it comes to local government agencies, cybersecurity risk has increased exponentially over the last few years. Cyber criminals know that they can operate without impunity, and the internet laws just haven't caught up. There's a lot of financial risk. In the event of a breach, you've got technology updates, legal fees, breach notification, recovering systems, cyber forensic investigations, and other costs that can easily exceed, hundreds of thousands of dollars just for a single breach. Thinking of data and applications, public safety has the most data, especially when you add in body cam footage. It also is the most sensitive data. Courts and utilities represent huge revenue sources for local government. So when those systems are down, revenue collection is halted. Becoming a victim of a cyber attack can also result in a loss of reputation or even a loss of the public's confidence in local government's agencies' leadership if data and systems can't be recovered quickly. Cyber attacks can put leadership jobs at risk as well. Another area of high risk is utilities and critical infrastructure. Imagine if water, gas, or electricity can't be delivered safely to residents because of a cyber attack. Technologies such as IoT, which make managing critical infrastructure more efficient, are now becoming attack vectors for cyber criminals. City and town administrators and managers have many challenges when it comes to cybersecurity, some of which are unique to local government. When looking at internal IT, it's not fair to look for them to be cybersecurity experts. In the world of day-to-day IT operations, there are many hats to wear, such as end user support, network management, vendor management, IT budgeting and planning, amongst others. And that's before you get to cybersecurity. Wearing many hats makes it difficult to develop cybersecurity skills. Third-party IT outsourcing and managed IT providers may be better equipped to handle cybersecurity, but the typical managed IT outsourcing contract only includes what I would refer to as basic cybersecurity. They're going to handle the Windows patching, endpoint protection management, but more comprehensive cybersecurity solutions aren't included unless you pay more. When it comes to your actual cybersecurity, your end users are still your greatest weakness. Phishing attacks, social engineering attacks, compromised credentials leaked on the dark web, and other data leakage are just a few of the threats facing end users. The best cybersecurity in the world can be defeated by an end user clicking on a phishing email. We've had many discussions with local government IT leaders over the past few years, and we've heard a common refrain: cybersecurity is the responsibility of IT. This is a dangerous mindset, as cybersecurity efforts have the most success when local government leadership leads the charge. We're starting to see a trend in this, a changing trend, primarily due to the increasing risk. Another big challenge is related to the increase in IoT devices. IP cameras, door readers, thermostats, audiovisual systems, and more are being added to networks. Without the proper security in place, these devices can provide an easy attack vector into your networks for cyber attackers. And last but not least, many local government agencies lack much in the way of IT and cybersecurity policies and procedures, and the few policies that exist are often not followed or enforced. Now let's take a look at our top 5 cybersecurity concerns for IT manager. Unlike the past, cyber criminals are no longer satisfied with just encrypting your data via ransomware. They gain access to your data through one of these 4 key paths. Then they study your data, exfiltrate your data, and use your data against you. In a cyber attack against the Washington, D.C. Metro Police back in 2021, cyber criminals claimed to have stolen more than 250 gig of data and released sensitive information on 22 police officers, including fingerprints, dates of birth, polygraph test results, and financial history. In the most recent Verizon data breach investigations report, the researchers identified the 4 key paths to your data. In other words, the most common ways that cyber attackers gain access to your systems. The first is credentials. Credentials continue to be harvested and stolen from users through social engineering and website database breaches, and then those credentials being dumped in the dark web for cyber criminals to use. Number 2, phishing. I think we can all agree that the types and sophistication of phishing emails being delivered to users continues to increase. It's critical it's critical that users receive regular training on how to avoid phishing. Put in chat if you've seen an increase in phishing. Number 3, exploiting vulnerabilities. Systems that have that are unpatched, along with zero-day threats, are an increasing attack vector. And number 4, botnets. While botnets are less effective than years past, they can still cause plenty of damage through distributed denial of service attacks that will cause congestion on your internet connections and make it nearly impossible to do business. Number 2 on the list, ransomware could be number 1 on this list of top cybersecurity concerns. But if you can block the 4 paths to your data, you'll significantly reduce your ransomware attack risk. Until then, ransomware is still a major concern. The latest Verizon DBIR report details how the increase in ransomware attacks in 2021 was as big as the last 5 years combined. And it's important to remember that ransomware is just a business model where access to your data is monetized. One big change in ransomware for 2021 was the fact that supply chain breaches became a huge threat to businesses and organizations all over the world. Compromising a key vendor can lead to ransomware attacks up and down the supply chain. In 2020, the multiple extortion strategy in ransomware emerged. Multiple extortion ransomware is a multi-stage ransomware attack that combines traditional encryption of the victim's files with the exfiltration of their data outside the organization to attacker-controlled servers. To strengthen multiple extortion, most of the ransomware gangs establish shame blogs where they post the names and in some cases, the data of victims who are not willing to pay the ransom. And finally, it's important to note that some nation-state attackers have decided to skip the ransomware extortion and simply just keep their remote access, possibly learning secrets that could lead to larger attacks down the road. Here's another concern that a case could be made to make it number 1 on this list, the human element. People continue to play a huge role in cyber attacks, with 82% of breaches involving the human element. Social engineering is an area where your users are susceptible. The oldie but goodie phone call, "Hi, I'm from your IT department and I need your username and password," still works incredibly effectively for social engineering attackers. Misconfigured servers and other systems that are accidentally exposed to the internet or include default credentials represent 13% of breaches. And privilege misuse are cybersecurity incidents driven by unapproved or malicious use of legitimate privileges. It's important to note that most of these incidents resulted in actual data breaches. Number 4 on this list should be near and dear to the heart of both city managers and IT managers. As IT leaders for your city or town, it is incumbent upon you to ask your city or town manager to learn more about cybersecurity and ask for that top-down leadership. IT managers should look objectively at their internal staffing levels and skills and ask themselves the tough question: do I have enough staff and the right skills to properly manage the cybersecurity posture of my city or town? If the answer is no or not sure, then start reaching out to MSSPs like the Fulcrum Group to understand what managed cybersecurity options might be best for your organization and what the cost for those services will be so that you can get them added to your budget. If you're outsourcing to an MSP, you should ask what managed cybersecurity offerings they provide as additional protections. Make sure you have end user security awareness training program that's compliant with Texas laws. Make sure it's CJIS compliant, and make sure it includes phishing simulations and dark web monitoring. One thing that we've learned over the last few years, it's hard to know what your cybersecurity needs are until you complete a baseline risk assessment. And after that, don't forget to include the creation of an incident response plan so that if you do have a cybersecurity incident, you'll know how to respond. One thing that we see commonly is that internal IT for local government rarely has the tools implemented for automated IT inventory. A basic tenet of cybersecurity is that you can only secure what you know about. Having automated IT inventories help your IT team spend more time driving the organization forward instead of tracking laptop inventory on a spreadsheet. And finally, the day is here where MFA is no longer considered advanced cybersecurity. It's considered a basic requirement for all organizations now. If you haven't implemented MFA, now's the time. It's the single thing that you can do to improve your cybersecurity posture the most. Most local government agencies have moved their email to the Microsoft Office 365 cloud, and many are now using Teams for critical communications and moving file shares to the SharePoint cloud. Many local governments agencies would say that Microsoft 365 is their most critical IT system. So when's the last time that you did a review of your cybersecurity for your Microsoft 365 tenant or reviewed your licensing? Do you have monitoring in place for critical items such as forwarding rules or logins from outside the country? Are you backing up your Microsoft 365 data? Microsoft only makes sure your data is highly available, but does not back up your data. Now I'm going to throw in a couple of bonus cybersecurity concerns. The first up is failing to meet compliance requirements. We've got MFA, even though it's not necessarily a compliance requirement, it's something that we feel like is something that all local government agencies should have. CJIS requirements continue to get more and more detailed. So you want to make sure you understand and know those compliance requirements and stay compliant so that when your audits happen, you're ready. Next up is your firewall. One of the things that we've seen is many of the major players' firewalls are not FIPS compliant, which is required for CJIS. Does your organization have a compliant email archiving system that allows you to easily fulfill and comply with open records requests? Let us know in chat if you have an email archiving system, or if you're not sure, let us know that too. Are you protecting your laptops with disk encryption? What happens if a laptop is lost or stolen? Without disk encryption, data on that laptop can be easily accessed. And how are you managing the growing inventory of mobile devices such as laptops, tablets, and smartphones? All right, here's our last concern and our bonus tip number 2. Not protecting all of your data is something that we see quite often. And we usually find out that city leadership has had no discussions with IT about the organization's requirements for recovery time objective. In other words, how long can you afford to be down? And recovery point objective, how much data can you afford to lose in the event of an actual server outage? We also commonly find that not all systems are backed up, especially Microsoft 365 data. And occasionally we run across government agencies that aren't sending a copy of their backups offsite at all, leaving them with no disaster recovery options in the event of a true disaster event such as a fire or tornado. Boom, a cyber attack, so an event, a breach, loss of data. Left and right of boom is a military term that is especially relevant to the war on terror, referring to the military's efforts to disrupt insurgent cells before they can build and plant bombs, the real boom. The good news is there are a lot of cybersecurity best practices for local government agencies out there. Those best practices have been established. The bad news is that cybersecurity isn't cheap. It's not just a one-time expense, and it requires time and effort across your organization, from leadership to IT to your end users. Before you can build a cybersecurity program, you need to understand your organizational risks. Starting with a baseline risk assessment helps you understand where are your most critical assets, what are they, so that you can focus your limited cybersecurity budget. Your next step will be deliver policies based on a cybersecurity framework such as NIST. Now you're ready for the cybersecurity basics. Every local government agency should have these basics, no exceptions. Windows patching, critical, as missing patches are often the attack vector for our cyber criminals. A good centrally managed cybersecurity solution that includes Windows patching and includes a managed endpoint protection solution can help you stop a lot of cybersecurity attacks. End user security awareness could be number one on this list, as end users are still the number one cybersecurity weakness. It should also include regular phishing simulations. If your firewall is older than 3 years old, it is likely missing some of the more advanced cybersecurity capabilities, such as cloud sandboxing. Mobile devices such as laptops and tablets should have their storage encrypted, so if they are lost or stolen, the data on those devices can't be accessed. A good asset tracking system with detailed reporting can help not only with cybersecurity, but also with budgeting. And of course, the number one way to reduce email attacks is to implement multi-factor authentication. We recommend it not only for email, but also protect your Windows login as well as your critical cloud applications. Before you consider advanced cybersecurity solutions and protections, you should ensure that you've got the basics down. That means annual review and updating of policies, annual end user cybersecurity training for your end users, regular executive level reporting across all areas of IT, and full MFA deployed for Windows, email, and cloud apps. Here's a dirty little secret. Most government agencies don't have 24/7 cybersecurity monitoring, sometimes because of a lack of knowledge and sometimes because of a lack of budget. Managed detection and response and SOC as a service, these vendors have solutions for 24/7 cybersecurity monitoring. Managed cybersecurity offerings through a managed security service provider, MSSP, such as the Fulcrum Group, can fill in the cybersecurity gaps that your internal IT team may lack with either time or skills. If your local government agency doesn't provide smartphones to your end users, you should probably consider using MFA tokens as the additional factor instead of personally owned smartphones. Does your local government agency have a third party auditing your accounting? We recommend the same thing for your IT systems. So having regular penetration or vulnerability assessments act as an audit for your cybersecurity posture. If you're still on legacy Office 365 subscriptions, you're missing out on the advanced cybersecurity features of Microsoft 365 E3 subscriptions, such as Windows 11 Enterprise, Intune Mobile Device Management, and Security and Compliance Center. Now that Microsoft 365 is such a critical part of your local government agencies, it makes sense to protect it with a cybersecurity monitoring and backup solutions. And finally, a centralized password manager can make your users' passwords more secure. You can also save each user approximately 40 hours per year in time saved entering and changing passwords. A cybersecurity incident can be an overwhelming experience resulting in infected endpoints, data theft, user disruption, extortion, and even outages that cause significant interruption to your local government agencies. These can be some of the darkest days for an organization and will require decisive actions that can have a direct impact on its ability to recover essential government functions in an expedited manner. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing incident response today, as Steve's going to be covering in the next presentation. And now we'll talk a little bit about CJIS. The CJIS policy contains specific IT requirements. We'll discuss some of the highlights here, focusing on remote access, audit trails, and password requirements. The first step is knowing that the CJIS security policy standards are the minimum required policies that you should adhere to, and you should consider implementing across your entire organization, not just public safety. Any third party that has remote access should use MFA, and there should be an audit trail to show who accessed your network and when. Users with CJIS access must be identified, monitored, and tracked. Least privilege access should be enforced when necessary to reduce risk to the information. One way to reduce cybersecurity risk is to segment your public safety network so that it's fully independent of the rest of your local government agencies' networks. Any of your third-party contractors who could potentially have access to CJIS data should have their staff subjected to fingerprint and background checks on an annual basis. You should check your current firewall to see if it meets the CJIS standard of FIPS compliance. Surprisingly, many of the major firewall players do not have FIPS compliance. And the FBI requires that any local government agency that experiences a breach must have an incident response plan in place and notify the FBI of any breach. All right, so that was basically my presentation. We do have an offer for any of the attendees of today's event. So if you want to get an idea of your Microsoft 365 environment, what the cybersecurity posture looks like, we've got a report that we can offer up for you. This is a one-time report. It's a great value at $999, and it'll give you a punch list of things that you can use to immediately improve your Microsoft 365 cybersecurity. So if you're interested, just reach out and we'll get that going for you. When we send out this presentation, it'll have a list of local government cybersecurity resources. So we've got those, and that's pretty much the end of my presentation.